I'll just summarize what I wanted to say. I was trying to say that hydrogen as a technology is not new, but how it is going to be used, that makes the whole difference. And I also highlighted that hydrogen as an element is inherently less safe. So, I choose some data to show that, it's kind of 20 times more challenging than how you handle the natural gas in terms of flammability range, in terms of ignition energy, or the detonation short range. And what I was also trying to highlight that, so far hydrogen has been used in the industrial setup where you have more control over the environment and safety can be ensured. But now hydrogen it is going to be in our home, in the vehicles, in the pipeline, and hence the challenges are going to be the several fold. And one of the solutions to start with is that the hydrogen technology, be it at the generation side or the transportation or at the end use, it should be safe by design itself. So that should be the first criteria, that how do we design to sort of ensure the safety. And to do that, we need to have a lot of empirical data. I mean, we need to understand that, sort of when you detonate hydrogen, what will be the impact pressure? Are we going to have the material that can withstand that kind of impact pressure? So third point, what I highlighted that for a small scale project and a small scale uses, we do have the empirical data, but for the large scale, we don't have. Regulations, guidelines are not that defined for the large scale. And therefore, we need to have the full scale experimental setup to have those data, and that will, help us in coming up with the design. And this will be an issue across all the market. This is not a particular issue for India.
Right. No, I think this is quite interesting. We'll continue on this again. So my next question on the supply side, probably the final question on the supply side, is to Bikesh. Bikesh, where do you see the possible price curves happening over the next 3-4 years? Today green hydrogen is at $5-6, but there is one theory that you hit $3-4, it becomes immensely useful for steel, etc. So quickly on price curves of hydrogen from the supply side.
Yeah, so I think Bhagitesh, before that, I think probably I'll like to touch upon one or two topics or issues that my fellow panelists did, point out. I think to start off with Dr. Malhotra, I think what's happening is that, yes, there is a state and a central divide in terms of the transmission line issues. But I think what I've seen in recently, at least on the solar PV side, so when you have this grid being connected or the renewable sources being connected into ISTS grid, then it makes it irrelevant whichever state it has been put in, so that you can wheel it on the central grid, which is the power grid, and then the state will have no say into it. So that eliminates or mitigates to an extent. Obviously, we'll have to see the final documents and details on the hydrogen policy.
Provided the consumption is also connected to CTU, it makes sense.
Provide the consumption also connected to CTU, you are right. So that's one part of it. And the other point, and I can see a silver lining in that, I think, is the fact that today, as Jackson, we're participating in opportunities to the tune of approximately, I would say, 150, 160 megawatts. And these opportunities of green hydrogen, and these opportunities are coming in from, thankfully, the refineries, the steel plants like SAIL, IOCL. There are refineries down in Northeast. They are, issuing GAIL. So they are wanting to really actually get the green hydrogen in the mix. So that's another silver lining that we have. The third point, which I think obviously on the supply side, when you talk about the enablers, I would say since there is a traction happening around this space, as I can clearly see, I think one of the important points to be borne in mind is the fact that today, not many people are bullish, and which I have been telling this in the past also, are bullish on the faster adoption of ammonia than hydrogen. And I'm very confident that will take much more better, achieve much more better traction than hydrogen, given the fact that the transportation and storage and is a big challenge currently, relative to which ammonia is much more easier. I'm just using the word relative. Now, I think on the supply side, again, besides of the cost curve and the technology innovation, I think there's a lot of other things that I feel is needed to ensure that we are there, when the demand picks up, when the cost curve becomes, more adaptive for the deployment. I think important point is today, like what Alok did mention, we have to ensure that there is a lot of upskilling and reskilling that happens on the resource fronts, which obviously should be ready to get into those deployment modes, as and when, these things achieve commercial viabilities. I've seen it myself as an experience, when solar PV was very nascent. We used to have a massive amount of skill gaps in terms of resources, in terms of, the people at site. And we found it very challenging to really deploy projects much faster, although there was a lot of demand at that point in time. So the need, I think, besides to clear the supply side, is to be ready for the, deployment phase. Alok did mention about the safety standards. I think we have not actually still realized what are the safety standards. Obviously, we'll have to follow because like PESO get into HAZOP and hazard mode, hazard modes of understanding and proactively trying to gain acceptability, which will help us give acceptability into global markets. I think coming back to your question on the cost curve, I think. See, I can clearly see we being at an inflection point. Again, I related to, I'm being sounding repetitive, 2011, where we were at the cusp of we are at the cusp of our solar PVs in 2011. I think it will follow the same cost trajectory, as was in solar and wind, which is means that for every doubling of the installed capacity, the cost will get substantially reduced. I think that's my view on the cost curve. Though a lot of people also opine that the fall will be much steeper, as it is a factor of scale. So on the technology front, I think it's important to dwell on the technology also. That if you take solar, for the single largest installation of a gigawatt, took almost from 2011 to almost 9 to 10 years. Instead, we were the ones in Sterling, Wilson, we installed 1.2 gigawatt single location plant in Middle East. So to reach a gigawatt scale, it has taken 10 years. Now, I think given over a period of time, a strong pull on the demand side and the deployment-led innovation would surely lead to reduction in costs of electrolyzers and other links in the value chain. So on the innovation side, increase of efficiencies, high utilization factors, revamping of existing, ammonia use cases. When I say revamping of existing ammonia use cases, is so you have these, fertilizer plants and all, wherein ammonia is a use case, fertilizers and refineries and all. So instead of going into green ammonia route through the, hydrogen passage, I think what we can also think of retrofitting those facilities by removing the fossil fuel fired hydrogen manufacturing, getting into the electrolyzer base there, and then capturing the air as we have been doing as is the age-old process of capturing the air and then going into the synthesis loop. So that will slightly relatively mitigate the risk on the ammonia side of it. So these are some of the cost curve possibilities that I can see in terms of reduction. The other point which I think is important for my fellow panelists to know, that we have been all this while talking about the utility scale, production. I think what is also happening, and we are very clearly working towards that, technology, which is the distributed energy, distributed hydrogen and ammonia, technologies, which is in the form of gasification using biomass. I know logistically, it is challenging in terms of getting the consumption and the, biomass at the same location. Given the fact that today, we definitely want to take it, at least to the places wherein a 0.5 tons per day to 2.5 tons per day is the requirement and the biomass is available. I think adoption of the gasification, technologies, which is obviously termed as green in its nature as per the nomenclature, would also help us really get into the ecosystem. And that's what I feel, I think, will help definitely the green hydrogen as well as the ammonia.
So, Bikesh, we lost you. Before Bikesh joins in, Dr. Malhotra, one final comment on what Bikesh said, saying ammonia is easier to...
Did I drop off?
Yeah, for a second, dropped off.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
So you're saying distributed, biomass, that's a good option and can be explored, and then we lost you after that.
Yeah, that's where that's my final take. I mean, that was my take on the supply side enablers, which are all low hanging fruits. I'm trying to talk on low hanging fruits. Yes, people did mention that hydrogen today, cost of hydrogen being $6-7. Where do I see it 3 years down the line? See, it's very difficult to contemplate as to what it would be 3 years line. And it all will depend on what are the kind of incentives, what are the kind of viability gap fundings that come in, what is the kind of partnerships that we are able to create by international partners, by getting into manufacturing out here in India. So all of that is something which obviously is evolving now. To tell from getting from $7 per kg into $3 or $2 per kg in 3 years may be far-fetched. But yes, I think that there are definite steps happening towards it, wherein the government is also stepping in and trying to be, like I mentioned, around 150, 160 megawatt electrolyzer capacity is under bid for various industries, and that is quite a bit for the stage that we are in on the cost side of it.
Thanks for
And,
that.
so maybe if I can add, I think that because you experienced this cost curve, yes, in the solar industry, yes. So in the past, nobody was believing that we are able to go down with the price so low, yes. And I believe that here we will also be able to scale up, especially that in solar we didn't have so much support, yes. And in the green hydrogen, there is so a lot of support coming from the governments, from the institutions, and very important also that in solar, there were small companies which are scaling up, and here they are big guys who are coming to the industry. Yes, so they will be able to scale up quicker. Yes, and thanks to that, thanks to the economy of scale, we'll be able to go with the price quicker down.
Yeah, absolutely, Thomas. I think we did speak about it in the past also. I think, and coming in from that experience of having seen it and done it, in terms of the scale, in terms of ramp up of solar, nobody would have anticipated solar would be a 150 gigawatt market in 2011. At that point in time, 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt was a monster, right? And today we're talking about 150 gigawatt per annum is the solar installation. So yes, I think, but there are certain fundamental needs that are required to be ensured. Like I said, like I mentioned, the skilling, the upskilling and reskilling of the resources, and getting into the safety and quality standards, regularizing them, aligning them what the global if you want to become an export hub eventually as hydrogen and ammonia, you need to align yourself as India to the global safety standards, which should be acceptable as and when you deploy it or export it for European or American countries. I think that's what I can clearly sense, and I can clearly see that yes, the ramp up, because now we're talking about big organizations as against what you rightly mentioned, as against the smaller PV guys. The ramp up and the scale up would be much faster and much more exponential in comparison to solar.
And maybe if I can add also that because there was a discussion about the price comparing to the gray hydrogen, yes, and right. I think thanks to the fact that we will bring new markets to the clean tech industry, will be even able to quicker reduce the price of renewable energies, yes, which will influence at the end of the day the price of the green hydrogen, yes, and then green hydrogen will be automatically more cheaper and better solution, better choice comparing to the gray hydrogen, yes.
Correct, absolutely.
No, thanks, Tomas and Vikesh. No, again on the demand side, so for instance, on the supply side interventions we spoke about, while the policies do definitely help, but predominantly it's the demand pull that has helped renewable energy, for instance. I mean, I can confidently say the renewable energy growth happened because the Electricity Act Section 86 and 61 that Vikesh, helped immensely to push through the renewables from 2010 to 15, both wind and solar in India. And it enabled DISCOMs to procure renewable energy, these two sections. And subsequently, the end users were obligated to, through RPO from 2011 onwards. Before the end users, especially in the last 3-4 years, have started utilizing renewable power for meeting their sustainability obligations in their own ownership. So this is how the demand side story has picked up in renewable as a parallel. So, Dr. Malhotra, given your long experience in the oil and gas industry, who are again the major consumers of hydrogen today, along with fertilizers. So, what kind of policy directives that are needed for both green ammonia and hydrogen to see that the demand gets picked up? Is this an RPO kind of an obligation, or a blending? Sorry, or is a via medium through gray, blue, gray, green? Do you think that transition will likely to happen?
You see, we talked about the government has been contemplating policy of, making it obligatory for refineries and fertilizer units, as we talked earlier also, about 10% or 20% or 30% gradually, going up by 2030 and replacing all hydrogen to be used, which should be green by 2030. That's the intent of that policy which has been discussed. I do not know what is the final kind of obligations they will put in, because there is, as I said in the earlier statement also, that the refineries have been resisting and the fertilizer industry will have problems from subsidy point of view. Having said that, the other thing which you said to us is about creating, whether we should go only green or whether we should go a mix of that. I strongly believe that hydrogen is colorless. Let us, as Evete also said, that in Canada they have been talking about color agnostic, approach for introducing hydrogen. I am not against green hydrogen. I wish that green hydrogen comes early. But since the price and the cost of green hydrogen at this point of time is high as compared to other hydrogen sources, irrespective of the gas, this temporary phase of very high oil natural gas prices, our refineries are preferring gray hydrogen to be used whatever they are producing the conventional way, because they believe that these prices are unsustainable and the gas price will come down. The other thing which India has also been looking at is about coal to hydrogen. We have large reserves of coal. As we move more to renewables, what to do with those coals and with that coal? And we have, when we talk about energy security for India, coal gasification along with carbon CCUS, which also, is very important. Without that, the coal gasification route doesn't survive at all. I will never recommend any coal gasification route to produce hydrogen or methanol, etc., unless you have sequenced carbon CCPC integrated along with it. But those kind of things are also equally important. Why I'm saying so is that till such time, the green hydrogen becomes affordable by the industry, we need to create fast track infrastructure, as was said by my Canadian counterpart in the association. She very rightly said we have to create the infrastructure. If you wait for how do you create the demand? It is the acceptability of the industry. You can force some of the industry like refineries which are in public sector, government control, that you have to buy or obligatory. There will be resistance, but still they may adopt. But if you want large industry like steel industry or other industries, etc., to voluntarily use hydrogen, then the demand will come. And that will come only if economics are favorable. And till such time, if the economics suddenly, as Mr. Bikesh was saying, that the economics are bound to be favorable in 6 years, 5 years, 6 years, we don't know whether in 5 years or 10 years. So we should fast track on creation of the infrastructure. Because if the infrastructure is there, at least the cost of transportation, delivery of hydrogen will be already low. And once you have the lower production cost of green hydrogen, I think it will just pick up like anything, the way the renewable energy has picked up. So at this point of time, when the green hydrogen is expensive by any means, we should not be saying that only we'll use green hydrogen, will not look at other colors. I think the blue hydrogen should also be used, and I strongly believe that the green hydrogen will have to piggyback on blue hydrogen, and that's how the transition has to happen. If you just wait for green hydrogen and don't use any other hydrogen, I think we'll delay the creation of infrastructure, and in that process will delay the introduction of green hydrogen or green ammonia. And ammonia, at least India has great ambitions of becoming a hub. So ammonia is a very important aspect from the transportation point of view. It's much easier than the hydrogen carrier of hydrogen. So I think these are some of the issues on policy side. The policymakers also need to address that, support the like corridors project, hydrogen corridors. Let us quickly set up those corridors. Transportation, we are not looking at. The transportation industry says the fuel cell costs need to come down. India, I know some of the companies now have started looking at internal combustion engines for hydrogen. I think that's the way to go about. Till such time the fuel cell costs come down, let us look at IC engines based on hydrogen. at least the emissions will come down and you will create the infrastructure of hydrogen.
So if I may add, Bhagitej, I think, and to complement what Dr. Malhotra said, I think even if you take today's scenario and if you obligate the consumers, which is approximately a 6 odd million tons per annum consumption that happens in India, right? Even if you put a obligation of 10%, which equates around 600,000 tons of hydrogens and approximately say 1.3 million tons of ammonia, because 13 million tons get consumed. The point here is not the obligation. The point, and what I've experienced also in the past, is the enforceability. We were having RPOs from 2011, but how many people did actually honor those obligations? Very, very few. I think there are very few people whom I know of that they honor those obligations. So it's a matter of enforceability, and even if the enforceability of 10% comes in, we may not be going full blown into green space or color being green. But even if we start taking baby steps of 500,000 of say obligated an RPO obligation, then obviously there will be a step that we will be taking towards the final objective to complement with Dr. Malhotra. Yes, a combination of both colors or the color agnostic situation. So I from a demand side, obviously clearly think that the enforceability of these obligations are very critical must from government side, and obviously then we can have various demand creators in terms of dollar-based bidding coming in for to attract external investments, then facilitate demand through aggregation by a credit with the body like SECI. Who aggregates all the demands and then starts bidding it in a dollar-denominated contracts. So these are all some of the loud thoughts which on the demand side are also critical and important.
So good that you brought in both the points.
A mix of all these kind of things will have to be done, to accelerate the introduction of hydrogen. And on the fuel cell, the transportation side also, steel plants, there is a lot of opportunity actually for hydrogen. Let us, the government.
Dr. Malhotra, lost you. So anyways, now, Bikesh, you made a couple of points which I think Dr. Malhotra is also emphasizing on. One, on creation of market, second, on enforceability. So I have a couple of questions on both. For instance, on enforceability, I think European Union has come up with a regulation which says from 2026 onwards, any steel that gets imported to Europe has to have certain carbon content below a certain level, and especially from I think developing countries is the word they've used. Which brings to the second point, how do we create a market? So the enforceability is being taken care of because the market itself is making you enforce, not a regulator like say RPO. So my next question is to Rolf. How do you think a market can be created? A market, and also preferably an aggregator who can aggregate both supply or demand, or maybe one of them. So do you think that would help in a case like India where the demand is really not much, but the demand comes from say certain refineries or certain fertilizers? So over to you, Rolf.
So I think you've given me like this monster question, which I think the entire world is struggling with, to be honest. So I'm not sure I have the complete full, or I can only answer parts idea. So I think in India, I think SECI will have a role to play. I also think that most likely it will be easier to focus on large industries, which are a limited number of single players. And I think that's so, and I think also, and it's better to focus on those sectors where you do not have reconversion. So you lose a lot of energy in converting hydrogen to different things. I agree also with Yvette's idea of hubs. I think there's massive really support. Europe is doing a lot in the hydrogen, in its own hydrogen valleys, as they're called in Europe. I think that would probably be the way where you at least get critical mass of industries together, and you just focus really on the major hard to decarbonize sectors first. Yes, Europe is going to steel. What India needs to be aware of is that actually it's not just green steel, it's not green steel. So Europe has placed quite a number of, let's say, eligibility criteria on, and there's quite a difference to India, whereas India allows for 30 days of banking of renewable energy. Europe only allows for an hour. It's still possible to do both in India. So if you use your energy during the day and you use whatever other grid energy at night, you can still sell 30 or 40 or whatever 50% of your steel or your ammonia then to Europe. But there will be many restrictions around the reporting, and really to ensure that it's additional, so that whatever renewable energy that is used is built specifically for the purpose or was recently built. So to ensure that the local population does not suffer from the diversion of energy not for hydrogen or ammonia. And so these will be, let's see, these are government policies that they're destined also to create a market now for green ammonia. I will not go into the discussion of the colors. I think it's really, as I said, I've said my opinion there very recently that green ammonia is now currently actually already comparable. So it's a question of your long-term views and your long-term investment costs. It's also when you go into blue, it's a question of if we expect now the reduction in the costs of green, and then you of course face the challenge of where do you put your money and your capital? Do you put it into blue and to your carbon capture, or do you put it into green? So those are just questions that investors will have to face. And so if you go into the markets issue, therefore, it's really knowing who will be your offtake and what will be the requirements are. And therefore, blue may be hard to sell in Europe. It may be easier to sell in Japan, for example, which I think is much more agnostic. And therefore, when it comes to markets, it's really a question of what is Europe will have one set, Japan will have another set, China may be a third set of criteria. And knowing those criteria will be essential actually to creating a market. Yeah, let me stop there.
I think quite valid points there, Rolf. So my next question is to Ivet, to understand how, say, for instance, Canadian consumers are transitioning. Where do you see the demand coming in from? Is there the traditional steel or refineries, or where do you think it is coming from, and how is the industry adapting to it?
Thank you. So the demand is coming partly from the steel industry. Interesting. So this is an interesting story of collaboration between Canada and India. So ArcelorMittal, which is a very large top steel producer, announced that they have tested successfully hydrogen production of direct reduced iron within their furnaces, within their steel plant in Quebec. They have also made a very bold announcement that they're looking to decarbonize their Dofasco Hamilton plant, steel plant. So that has developed a tremendous opportunity for a hub in the Hamilton area. The volumes we're looking at could be around 500 tons of hydrogen per day. So imagine that demand and all the other companies that can benefit, all those other parties within the ecosystem. So there's that demand. There's a lot of demand within the transportation space, specifically heavy duty vehicles, big mandates to decarbonize. So clearly action has to be taken, and we have been talking about policies, right? So this is one of those policies that help enable. There's going to be a ban on ICE cars and light duty trucks from 2035, and then heavy duty trucks will follow, right? So definitely action has to be taken. So the cement and concrete industry is also one of those very hard to abate industries. So there's a very good opportunity for concrete trucks, for example, to switch to hydrogen. And why would hydrogen be important here? Weight for concrete trucks is quite important. Hydrogen can be very beneficial here. And it is not directly at the cement kiln, which is a very complex process to decarbonize. So chemistry also in steel, right? The chemistries are quite important. So fuel switching is complex too. So decarbonizing the transportation side of the cement and concrete industry is a very clever idea. So and I'm using concrete trucks as an example, but in general, we're looking at a lot of demand from the trucking industry. There's a good good progress in Edmonton. There's another large hub that's making a lot of progress in the Edmonton region that's in the province of Alberta. There's a little bit of light duty vehicles on the West Coast, in the Vancouver area. We work with sister organizations in the US, and there's this vision of a BC to BC highway, BC to BC meaning Baja California, just Mexico border, all the way to British Columbia. That would be a major corridor that would result in tremendous greenhouse gas emissions reductions. So that's a lot of where the demand is coming from now. And again, the hub model is helping gather all those parties around the hub so that the prices can be more manageable, of course.
No, that's heartening to hear. I think Canada is addressing quite a lot of demand challenges, steel, concrete, automobiles, you said, refineries. So, Alok, where do you see demand growth happening in India? DNV does publish, energy transition outlook year on year. Which sectors do you think will adapt faster? And more importantly, given your experience in shipping part, where do you see green ammonia becoming a fuel, especially with India?
So in India, we see that the refineries they will be the first one to pick it up, and then of course the fertilization industry, and of course other industrial sector like steel. So these are the large consumer of hydrogen, and these are the sectors which will be targeted. When coming to the shipping industry, I don't expect hydrogen because of the low energy density to be directly used as a fuel. Most of the maritime industry, they are more adapting or gearing up to transport hydrogen. What I can expect that by end of 2030, as per our DNV energy transition outlook, around 2% of methanol, 2% of the shipping fuel energy mix will be coming from the methanol, and that will be electromethanol. But once we are able to sort out or solve the issues around toxicity of ammonia, after 2030, that is going to pick up. And we expect that by 2050, half of the energy fuel mix of shipping that will come from the hydrogen derivative, and out of that, around 30%, 35% will be coming from ammonia, and 50% from methanol. So I hope I could answer your question about this.
Yeah, Alok, no, that was quite helpful. So before we take audience's question, I have one final question that's on the manufacturing front for both Ivet and Bikesh. So where do you see, for instance, Bikesh, you come from you represent a company which has manufacturing experience in the country. How do you see, domestic manufacturing raising up to the challenge for both electrolyzer and fuel cells? And the continued question to Ivet is, how do you see industry partnership with Canada helping Indian companies?
So, see, like what you rightly mentioned, Bhagite, is that we are one of the very unique companies who have a manufacturing forte, which is obviously historically been there, and obviously of late added to that the EPC and the delivery strengths. In terms of our manufacturing aspirations, yes, obviously we do have manufacturing aspirations in getting into partnerships on multiple technologies, which is both the PEM as well as alkaline. We are in conversations with some of the large PEM manufacturers from outside India, and some of them from within India for the alkaline technology. So I think the problem today we are facing is that, like, if you take alkaline has been historically present everywhere, and in India also we're dealing with some people, or we're talking to some people who are there in the business from the last 35 to 40 years. I think they have currently a 1.5 megawatt electric stack, which they are obviously wanting to scale up to a 2.5 megawatt. So I think in terms of the PEM technology, we are dependent on the imports as of now, because it all uses rare earth metals, indium as catalyst, coating platinum as catalyst, Nafion membrane, and Nafron and titanium as membrane. So we are dependent on import at the moment, and obviously there is a lot of incentives that need to come in order to spur the manufacturing locally. And when you talk about incentives, some of that which comes to my mind is, the production linked incentives, the PLIs, for key equipments like electrolyzers and, compressors, if at all, they come into the picture. Duty waivers, because a lot of PEM metals would come in from outside, duty waivers and GST reductions. We need to ensure we create those specific SEZ zones for the complete supply chain development. I think grant shops for R&D. I think one more important factor, like Dr. Malhotra and all other some of the other panelists did say, that we need to be ready for with our infrastructure, as and when we are able to adopt the mass scale, adoption. In terms of, today you have an automobiles body called Automobile Association, ARAI, which tests the roadworthiness of the vehicles. I think we have to create such kind of center of excellences, which gives us the worthiness of equipments, not only for India, but also for the global demands. So that is a very important element for us to be ready to adopt scale, as and when we get into, not only for the Indian requirement, but also for the global needs. So on the manufacturing side, that's my take, is that it is going to be definitely, very helpful if we are able to create and forge partnership both within as well as outside of India, and try and start the manufacturing base. And obviously with the support and incentives of the government that I mentioned, earlier in my remarks. And also, I think when you're talking about Evet, I think I did mention to her the last time, we are in conversation again with some of the startups per se, and some of semi-mature guys on the electronics as well as on the fuel cell side, and hoping to see some of them blossom into a partnership for us for manufacturing out here in India. So that's about how the manufacturing pans out as of now, for us as Jackson, and obviously as an overall scheme of things in India.
Oh, thanks, Bikesh. Evet, any quick comments from you on the manufacturing side of hydrogen?
Yeah, so my membership is very diverse. I represent, I have members who are startups and members who are multinational companies. So this is very interesting. I'm going to focus on the startup and SME feedback we receive. Of course, connections to local demand. Say if we were thinking about Canadian companies working together, a number of companies, because of where they are in their life cycle, smaller companies, they sometimes have difficulties going straight into a multi-gigawatt manufacturing endeavor, right? And sometimes when thinking about factory localization, etc., they sometimes talk about looking at medium-sized projects that can be modular or stackable. That is, you start with a more modest megawatt level project that can actually be that is modular, so it can be expanded as demand is built. And I think that speaks about the complexity of the process and the supply chain challenges around producing this, developing, manufacturing these big electrolyzers, etc. So that's a little bit of the feedback that we constantly receive. I think the next part of your question for me was some examples of collaboration between Canadian and Indian companies. Well, I mentioned the example of ArcelorMittal, which has a strong presence in Canada. One example that I very much like, because it has a lot of historical value, a number of Indian electrolyzer industry has actually spurred from a joint venture from the 1990s with a Canadian company called Electrolyzer Corp, which is today Hydrogen Optimized, for those interested in continue working with them. And that collaboration formed in India Electrolyzer of the East, which led to a number of companies like Spire Energy. And to this day, they continue to commercialize what they call the Stuart, because of the founder of the company, Stuart cells, developed by the family, by the Stuart family. So it is a Canadian family company, many generations of experience and good good history collaborating with India. And then there's Ballard Power System, a company that probably that is quite well known, international, that has an MOU with Adani for hydrogen fuel cells development, and has actually received a purchase order from Tata Motors already, which is of course a leading manufacturer in India. So it's quite rewarding to see this good track record and of mutually beneficial collaboration. And of course, I really hope that this webinar is another motivator for everyone in the audience to continue doing this.
No,
Can I also add Tesh, on this? I think that you are using very often this collaboration word, yes, which is very important. And you can see here, together we are stronger. And I think that it's very important now that, because this is very new industry that needs to mature. Yes, we need to make hydrogen technology scalable and robust. Yes, we have so many different electrolyzer technologies. There is no standardization. Yes, there is also different maturity level of different technologies. So what we believe in the club, that is important to unite leaders from the hydrogen from different continents, but also to unite them with clean tech leaders, even with the players from the oil industry, with the utilities. And we should together think about the whole system, yes, because you see, there will be a lot of local production, but there will be also a lot of imports, yes, and it will be like a, let's say, global. We should not speak about Indian market or the European market. We should speak about the global infrastructure, global system. And I think this is very important. And in this case, also when we will be working on the standardization, maybe it would be great to make it on the global level, yes. And there is so a lot of knowledge which exists in different countries, that it's such a pity not, to match this knowledge together, yes, not to overlap and not to make the mistakes, everybody separately, yes. So I believe that this is very important. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
so
then I think that thanks to that, Mr. Malhotra will become more green, yes, like his background at the screen. No, but I think it's very important, yes, that all the players, because you see, we are working separately, yes. You are working with your industry, we work separately, yes. So recently we worked with the utility, we met with the utilities for the first time. And actually, utilities, they understood also it's not a transition, it's really a true transformation. So we are very open to also meet with Mr. Malhotra. I will be in India in September. So I hope that we'll meet all together at Renewable Energy India, yes, in September.
In fact, I would like to step in. There was a little intermittent internet problem, but then yes, I would like to step in for the fact that we've already jumped way ahead of our time, and so if you could just wrap it up, Mr. Reddy and Tomas, and then probably I could just take it up further. If any question, last question, if you guys would want to take from the question which have come from the audience, which I've shared with you.
Yeah. So I think there's one interesting question. Are existing internal combustion engines capable of firing green hydrogen? Is there a chance of retrofitting them?
Yeah, I think there's work going on in India. There's already some work going on. I don't want to name the company. I'm aware about it. That they are trying to, heavy duty trucks, truck engines from diesel to trying to develop a retrofitment or kit for converting that diesel engine into the hydrogen IC engine. And whether it is green hydrogen or gray hydrogen, engine doesn't recognize the color of hydrogen. So at least as far as the engine is concerned, any hydrogen, green or gray or blue, whatever it is.
Right. No, there are other questions to Amit, but I'll say, for instance, there's a question on possible usage of green hydrogen in cement manufacturing, more as a reduction agent. It can be used. Are there any possibilities of ICE engines? So that's what Sir has just mentioned. Preference for solar or wind. Will hydrogen complement or become an obstacle? No, definitely they'll complement. Hydrogen is a good.
Maybe I can add also here, because it's a very interesting question, because I'm coming from the solar industry. Yes, so at the beginning we had always worries that hydrogen can be competition. Yes, and then when I met with our leaders from hydrogen, they told me, Tomasz, we are the best friends. So actually, it's a new market that you didn't think in the past that will bring for you. Yes. So I think this is very important. Yes. So we can make the whole transformation only by using solar, wind, energy storage, and hydrogen. Yes. So let's make it green.
There is one question, Mr. Reddy, on mixing of hydrogen with CNG. We had done a lot of work on HCNG mixtures, and in fact, 18% of hydrogen can easily be mixed with the CNG, and that can be used in the existing engines. We had done a lot of work at IUC R&D, converting the existing CNG engines to work on hydrogen CNG mixtures, and the material compatibility with 18% is fine. Beyond 18%, the steel embrittlement issues can arise. Even the pipeline transportation and the natural gas pipelines, if you want to transport this mixture up to 18%, you can possibly easily do without any safety concerns. Beyond that, you need to look at the materials of the pipelines.
So in fact, NTPC is doing a pilot to blend domestic gas as well with hydrogen. I think you're right, sir. Yeah.
So there's one more question, Bhagitesh. That's a question, an interesting one at that. What's the volume of production of hydrogen one should plan to get down the cost down very much close to gasoline cost in India? So looks like an interesting question to me. The reason being, I think people will have to understand the cost of hydrogen and its energy density with respect to gasoline. So effectively, what is happening is the production of hydrogen is a combination of multiple factors, right? There is the cost of the electricity, the renewables, and there's the cost of the electrolyzers, there's a cost of other balance of plant, which gets into making of, or producing of green hydrogen. And I'm specifically talking, and I'm assuming that this question is related to green hydrogen rather than the normal hydrogen. So effectively, today, if you take the gray or brown hydrogen, if you take the CCUS also into picture, fossil-based hydrogen may cost anywhere between $1 to $2, and if you add CCUS, it may add another $75 or dollars. So we're talking about hydrogen, which is fossil fuel with CCUS or CCS being of the same price of gasoline. But then obviously, because of the energy density, it can run you much higher mileages than the gasoline as of today. But when you talk about comparing it with the green hydrogen, I think it will definitely, as we all know, that we are targeting approximately $3 to $4 by 2030. That's where we feel that given the mileage that will come out accrue out of the density equation, we should be in a position to claim that there will be parity in terms of gasoline prices and the green hydrogen prices. That's my view on this question.
Mr. Bikesh, I would like to add that once the fuel cell costs do.
We lost you, Dr. Malhotra.
It takes like a second for Dr. Malhotra to come back, So though, yeah.
So
I think there are questions which are coming in if you guys still have the time. Dr. Malhotra, we are missing you.
So there's one more question. Interesting
Dr.
question.
Malhotra has come back.
Sorry.
Dr. Malhotra, we missed you for a minute, for those 10 seconds.
So you're on mute. Dr. Malhotra, you're on mute.
No, I was saying that once the fuel cell costs come down, the higher energy efficiency of fuel cell will also help. So
yes, absolutely.
What Mr. Bikesh said, they will even, this will help even more to see when you compare gasoline versus hydrogen. If you use it in fuel cells, it is much more efficiency also,
Absolutely. I think there's one more interesting question, close to my heart question that is there. Sorry, I'm just, slightly, taking much more than expected time from me. So it does mention, and we did talk about how can we start smaller hydrogen generating stations, right? We spoke about the distributed, distributed hydrogen, and I was taking a step further, and in terms of saying distributed hydrogen and distributed ammonia as well. And when I spoke about it, yes, there's a lot of work going on various platforms in terms of creating gasifier-based biomass as a feedstock-based distributed hydrogen and ammonia plants, which can be captively used in various use case application, and varying from 0.5 TPD or tons per day to approximately 2.5 to 3 tons per day. So there is definite work happening, and we may be coming soon out with some partnership which will help us, definitely, create this technology as well. And when we talk about this technology again, environmentally, you have in NCR, in northern part, you have this stubble in India, which is cause a major environmental concern in winters. And if that is densified, that can act as a good feedstock for these gasifiers to convert them into hydrogen and then maybe put it into a synthesis loop of ammonia as well. So yes, there is work going on. There is possibility of generating small hydrogen as a distributed hydrogen, and probably we will hear some good traction on this in the coming future.
Thanks, Bikesh. No, Amit, I think the questions are accumulating now.
Right. So what we'll do is, let's take these questions offline, and I have a solution to that, Mr. Reddy. So no, if I may take the baton from you now and from the
Sure,
panelists,
please.
I understand that everybody has their own other schedules as well. So as time always falls short, but nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, we continue the journey of hydrogen to REI, Renewable Energy India Expo, Asia's most influential show of renewable and clean energy, is scheduled for 28th to 30th September 2022. I, on behalf of Informa Markets, invite you and your associates to join us at the mega show, which will continue its legacy of bringing the best of technology, business associations, and knowledge forums under one roof. Hydrogen will be a much talked about topic over there. Please join us over there. All our experts from here would be joining us also at REI. I'm also obliged and deeply thankful to all our August panel who joined us from different time zones and enriched us on the most named topic and source of clean energy today, hydrogen. Please accept our good wishes and a note of thanks. Thank you so much, Mr. Bhagatish Reddy, for moderating the session. As always, we go richer. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tomas, for co-moderating the session and bringing in the overseas perspective and being the brand ambassador of clean tech business and REI. Thank you to Ms. Ivet for your deliberations, and thank you for joining us at this early hour from your present location in Canada. We definitely look forward to receiving you at REI in India. Thank you, Dr. Malhotra. You're the beacon of green energy in India. I'm so sorry for keeping you waiting. I understand you've got another meeting. So thank you for that. Rolf, I understand you've also got another schedule which is coming up. So thank you so much. It was a wonderful session, wonderful deliberations. We look forward to meeting you at REI. Bikesh ji, as always, charming. Very productive discussion. Thank you so much for the perspective, for bringing the perspective of India and the clean fuel. We wish you the best in your new role and look forward to meeting you at REI.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much.
Yes.
Alok
ji, thank you
Look
so
forward
much.
to see you all soon.
1 second, cut it up. Alok ji is there. So, Alok ji, thank you so much. We definitely looking forward for a larger role of DNV at REI. And thank you so much for bringing the safety, requisites of hydrogen into the forum. So I also thank all our audience who participated and who made the webinar a success. There's a link to the survey which would take your 30 seconds, and it will help us to make the upcoming forums far more better. I thank Mr. Rajneesh Khattar, who've been so supportive for us to, and who actually made this session happen. So this is Amit, and thank you so much. Look forward to connecting with you at REI.
A thumbs up for solar and also for hydrogen. Yes, the best friends forever.
Definitely. Let's do that.
Earlier, Tomas always used to say, thumbs up for solar. Now he thinks thumbs up for solar and green hydrogen.
Our team at the back end is already taking pictures. Probably, we can all do a picture for Tomas. Together we are stronger,
let's make a picture together for
thumbs up. Yeah, the thumbs up.
Good.
Right.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
for your time.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, Ross. Pleasure.